So welcome everybody to this 2-hour workshop. It's the first one of its kind. I'm very excited. David and I are very excited. It's about the 4R's, but as you'll see, we've kind of put a slightly different twist on it. And in fact, in chatting with David, when we were thinking about the workshop, we've come up with, I think, which is rather than just introducing you to the 4R framework, which I guess, given who you guys are, won't be new to you at all. So we've kind of put a different twist on it, and I hope you find that interesting and enjoyable. So this is the first, it's kind of like a pilot session, and I'm going to be asking you after a little bit towards the end, depending on how the time goes, but also after the workshop, I'm going to send you a little feedback questionnaire, if that's okay. And I'd love for you to fill that in and send it back to us so we can make sure that we improve the next one. And we hope to then open that up to the wider DA community. So thank you for the time, and let's begin. We're going to start with, I'll just share screen here. Finding your thread will begin to make more sense. Can everybody see that? Give me a thumbs up. Begin to make more sense in a moment. Here's a quick structure. We're going to do a check-in. I'm going to ask you what would make this extremely valuable for you. A little bit of framing about the 4R's of DA. And then we're going to have a mythic story. A story to change the world. And then we're going to go into breakouts using the 4R questions. Then we'll have a little comfort break, some reflections and next steps, and then we will check out. So I want to now share a piece of music with you. This is not background music. This is actually a part of the workshop. And I want you to, I'm going to use this as a kind of combined seeing what you hear in the music, and also I'm a kind of a presencing process as well. Hi Dorian, welcome. So I've chosen this piece of music specifically for this, and I think it's gorgeous. I think the lyrics are spot on. And I'll also be kind of making some gentle suggestions as you're listening. So just get really comfortable and relax as much as you can. And here we go. Can you hear that?
In the real world, and I found myself in the real world. I'll meet you there in the real world.
So just getting really comfortable. Take some deep breaths.
I'll see you in the real world, free from the guilt and oppression.
Just come into your body.
Free from the constant depression. Open to just feel the emotion. Away from hatred and judgment. Free from the killing and fighting. I'll meet you there in the real world.
Es como ir debajo de la piel, ir adentro, ir a algo más profundo. Y entonces ahí pasan cosas misteriosas.
Trust your intelligence, your body, your mind, your spirit.
decía que la música no le pertenece a nadie. O sea, cuando haces música y conectas, entras en ella. Como algo que ya está, ya existe, ya existe.
Wake up from a dream and look around you. Look around you, see what's been missing for you to do. And let go of that veil that's stopping you from connecting to everything you knew. Everything you know. Stop paying attention to the things that make you tired, things that make you bored. Now, the power is yours. You are responsible for every situation. Stop fighting the system. The new liberation comes from the silence in you. I'll meet you there in the new world. And I found my soul in the real world. I'll meet you there in the real world.
Nice, isn't it? Fantastic. Okay, so let's do a quick check-in. And again, apologies for this. It's always a difficulty with groups this size. I just want to ask each of you in one word, what's it like to be you today? And then when you've done that, what would make this workshop really valuable for you? And I'd love you to type that in the chat. So one word, what's it like to be you today? And then secondly, what would make this workshop really valuable for you? And let's start off with Manx Cat, please.
Hi, being me today is baffling.
Baffling, okay. Choose who's going to go next.
I will pass on, please, to David Baum.
Inexplicable. Dean Walker.
Inexplicable, okay. And Kat, if you could be typing what you'd love to get, and David as well, thank you. Who's next, David?
Me.
Dean, please.
Surfing. And I'm choosing Igor.
Everything together. Matthew.
Intellectually stimulated, and I'd like a more rounded embodiment.
And who's next?
Michaela.
Intense. I'll pass to Malika.
Thanks, Michaela. What is it to be me? Be in the liminal space. And I pass it to Kat.
Thank you, Malika. Blessed. Christina.
Just excited.
Rowan?
Buoyant. And Karen?
I have excited too. Dorian.
Melting. Over to Marge.
I think Marge may be having difficulty. Marge?
Well, maybe over to Stephen then.
Thanks.
It's hard to put in one word. Fragmented. Fragmented. And anyone else? Okay. Everyone's gone?
Thank you. I'll take it back then, and my word is excited. So if you haven't already done so, type in the chat what would make this really useful. I just love, David says, I just love to hear what people say. Restoration of spirit. I'd love to find ways for the DA framework to become more actionable for me. Touching deep layers, new methods of work with 4R's, non-conventional discussion, as it was in the music video. I'm intellectually stimulated. I'd like a more rounded embodiment, more connection with this group of people. It'll be really valuable for me if I come away with a better sense of how to constantly live my collapse awareness in the same way I constantly live my faith, my motherhood, my bereavedness, so I can carry that awareness with me and have my sense of the 4R's inform my decision-making and way of being in the world. Time to stop and reflect on my own development of my thoughts on the 4R's and hear about others, to be immersed with all these wonderful people in an exploration of the 4R's questions. Outcome is irrelevant for me personally, looking for new ways to help. I would like embodiment practices around the 4R's, and I have to leave early, apologies. Excited, no expectations. I'm curious what will be unfolding. It would be valuable to understand how to make sure finding my thread is based on the 4R's rather than through holding other narratives and social constructs. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. That's really helpful for us. And Rowan, I couldn't help noticing your one word was buoyant, just like a marine scientist to say that. Fantastic. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for sharing those things. And again, none of this will be new to you, but the premise here is, as we know, about enabling and embodying loving responses to our predicament. And I kind of, here are the 4R's questions. And when you go into the breakout rooms a little bit later on, in case you don't have them memorized or you don't have them to hand, I will be providing a link where you can go and make sure you see them when you're in small groups. So resilience, what is it that we most value and how can we keep that? How can we build and sustain our resilience, both inner and outer? What's most important now? Relinquishment. What can we give up in order not to make matters worse? Restoration. What can we bring back that has been lost? And reconciliation, reconnection. How can we make peace with, love and support others and live with kindness, joy and peace? And as you again probably know, the thing I love about this is, as well as asking these as a personal question, you can split them into the individual, the family, the collective, and even the global. And it's something that I often do on my retreats and workshops, is to get people to stick post-it notes all over these things, depending on what their particular interest area is. So just some framing about the 4R's that occurred to David and I. So I think actually the 4R framework and answering these questions, asking and answering these questions is a pretty good way to live, whether or not society collapses. Actually, I know we've all come to an acceptance of that, but I think it's a really life-affirming way to live. And and just wanted to kind of emphasize that the questions here are the important thing, the questions. And so many times when I'm working with local people who aren't collapse aware as part of my community group, they're so keen, of course, to rush straight to practical actions. And I'm always kind of trying to hold them back and get them to slow down, and to see that it starts with ourselves. So looking within before looking outside, looking at the inner before looking at the outer. Because I've just seen for myself that those outer ideas are probably going to be more informed by wisdom and clarity when you've done the inner work. And collapse is, I think, probably going to be a process, not an event, and in fact is already unfolding in various parts of the world, all over the world. But I want you to notice throughout this workshop that your ideas are likely to change during that process of collapse. So your kind of before collapse ideas are probably going to be very different. And they're going to be constrained inevitably by the fact that we're all still living in this system now. We're all still living kind of business as usual. So just be aware of that and allow yourself to kind of shift and have those ideas become fluid and you know, change over time. And I just wanted to clarify that the 4R questions, for me anyway, are not about how can I turn all this around, but rather how can we deeply adapt to what is likely to be a very different future. Since Jem came up with the framework, obviously many groups have brainstormed ideas, and I'm going to show you just a few now. Again, these won't be new to you, I don't think. But if we just go to resilience here, and I'm going to send you all this slide deck so you don't have to kind of read. I know the writing's very small. So if we look at resilience, we've got a whole list of things there that could be described as inner. It's certainly not an exhaustive list. And a whole list of things that could be described as outer. Just give you a moment to skim read those. And by the way, do unmute yourself at this point if anybody want to come in with a question or an important addition for you, or just something that you want to say about any of those. Just unmute yourself and come in. I'll just leave a few seconds as a pause. Going once. Going twice. And it's interesting how over the last 3 years or so, this my own personal list of things has certainly changed a great deal. As I've kind of woken up more and more to what's really important now. So moving on then to relinquishment. Again, I've split that into inner and outer. And again, these are just gentle suggestions. They're not at all musts or shoulds, or these are just things that other people have kind of brainstormed in the past. a big thing that I've found with all sorts of groups and myself is one of the biggest things to relinquish is our stories about ourselves and our identity, our maps for navigating life, priorities. Maybe we need to relinquish, as was, you know, it's one of the wonderful things about DA for me is the loving responses. So relinquishing judgment, othering, and also guilt and perfectionism. Doesn't really serve anybody. Again, anybody want to come in on any of those with just a comment or something that you've seen? Yeah, Dean.
Yeah, I'm pleased that you have this here in the outer portion of relinquishment. And in your mention of things at scale, like the whole infinite growth on a finite planet and that sort of thing. And I've been particularly focusing there in my version of this work for a few years, and there's a whole field called, you know, they like to call sense making in this, you know, realm. And there are a couple of other ways to name these things other than these outer examples of relinquishment. And one of them is perverse incentives in our world, be they political or corporate, and they're far larger. They're along the lines of the infinite economic growth, but they're quite specific in that they actually have been daunting for me to wrap my head around. Like, we actually are running our world in this way. So I would suggest just perhaps putting a little post-it, you know, marker for a slightly more detailed track that those who are into it could follow.
Yeah, great.
To articulate those, because all the lovely plans we might have for the what we're going to get to in your suggestions for, you know, resourcing and so on, it's just been so daunting for me to stumble on these perverse incentives built into our systems that without articulating them, we're setting ourselves up to be just, it'll be a tougher road. That's all. I mean, to say it diplomatically.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so pleased you raised that, and maybe you put in the chat some good resources, particularly about that. I have come across sense making and been really enjoying learning about that. And you know, a big, as I guess for many of the folks here, what's happened for me over the last 3 years has been a kind of a connecting of the dots across everything. And you know, it's certainly not just about either mitigation or even adaptation in the superficial, shallow sense of that. It's the whole damn thing. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dean. Anybody else? Okay. And then the last two, I haven't actually split them into inner and outer because I kind of found that challenging to do. But just some ideas there on restoration. And then again on reconciliation, reconnection.
Can I ask why the first two was with this inner and outer? And
just because I struggled with doing it for the second, for the last two, and I'd really appreciate maybe some help on that. But there's some for me that just kind of straddle inner and outer, but you know, but that's the only reason. And of course, we've got the reconciling with our own death there, the death cafes that form a part of the deep adaptation events. And as you know, there's so many wonderful events and offerings and processes in the deep adaptation space, you know, which you're the folks that run most of them, so you know very much. But again, bear in mind that this workshop is aimed at the wider DA community who may not know so much, maybe new to those offerings. Great. So we're going to have the mythic story in a moment. But I just wanted to kind of really underline that this workshop has got, you know, it's not about shoulds, it's not about being a hero. It's certainly not about trying to guilt anybody into doing more than they're already doing. I suspect your life and your lifestyle has already shifted substantially, maybe even transformed since your collapse awareness. Well, I know it has from talking with many of you. So it's nothing to do with guilt, shoulds, or being a hero. And there's no one right path, of course. We've been having lots of conversations recently about maplessness, as many of you know. And in many ways, the whole of deep adaptation is an invitation into maplessness. And I wanted to just read you a piece that I love. You may be familiar with it, by Martha Postlethwaite. It's very short. Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is your life falls into your own cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. And I love that. I think the key line for me there is create a clearing in the dense forest of your life. So many of us just live in this kind of perpetual busy epidemic, busy-minded and busy out there in the external world as well. And I certainly found for me that it's only after having created that clearing in the dense forest that I was able to really listen and hear those nudges from my wisdom, nudges from the universe, nudges from my heart intelligence, or whatever you want to call it. So I just wanted to pause at that point before I share the story, the mythic story, and just give you anybody an opportunity to come in again with any comments or observations or questions. Yeah, Stephen.
I think the two words that keep resonating from whatever spiritual training I've had is the only things that really give us power over things that we can't directly affect or change in an immediate sense are making space, keeping space, and being with. As uncomfortable or difficult as it is, when you try to avoid or escape or deny, the space contracts. And that's the hardest thing is that's that clearing in the forest. And it's in that space where there's a possibility that something will emerge, because what usually happens that makes a difference uh, does not happen out of any plan. It simply emerges, and if you're awake, you recognize it, and then you have food. And I have a story. This isn't the time to tell it, that I've told before. Maybe some people have heard it, that encapsulate that whole thing. So maybe when I'm in a breakout room, whoever I'm with will get to hear that again. That's all.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stephen. Okay. So this is I'm gonna actually have Michael Mead share the story. He's a mythic storyteller that you may have heard of, and this was actually during a conversation he had with the lovely Russell Brand, who's become a bit of a hero to me over the last few years. He's really grown up. But you only really hear from Michael Mead. So again, just sit back and enjoy.
Is there a story that occurs to you to tell us now that seems appropriate?
So I have to pick one story for the condition we're in the world, which for me begins with the climate crisis, which is involving everything and everybody and all beings on the earth. And then if you drop down, you have the coronavirus pandemic, which is the humanitarian crisis that affects all people, or it can. And then here in the United States, when you drop down, you drop into the social justice crisis and Black Lives Matter. And those things are all connected, and they're all happening at the same time, along with the crisis of truth and untruth and all that stuff. So how do you get a story to relate to that? So here's a Native American story told by several tribes in North America. It's pretty brief. It begins with the idea that there's a cave. And inside that cave is all the knowledge that everybody's been looking for, but somehow no one goes to that cave. There's all kinds of roads and highways and everybody going back and forth 24 hours a day, and no one finds that cave. But if you found the cave, inside the cave, there's an old woman. And she's weaving a garment, and she's been weaving it for a long time, and it's the most beautiful garment anyone has ever seen. And she's down to the hem of the garment, and she wants to weave that out of porcupine quills. And in order to weave the quills in, she has to bite down on them. And she's been biting down on quills for so long, she's worn her teeth down to the gums, but still she keeps biting down and weaving on. And every once in a while, she has to go to the back of the cave where there's an ancient fire, and hanging over that a cauldron. And in the cauldron are the seeds of all the plants and all the trees and all the fruits and all the grains. And if she doesn't once in a while stir the cauldron, all the seeds will burn, and there won't be any plants, and there won't be any grains or any flowers or any trees. And so she gets up, and because she's old and working so hard, she moves slowly back towards the cauldron. And as she goes back towards the cauldron, the black dog, what black dog? The black dog goes over to where the garment is laying, waiting for her to return. And the black dog sees a loose thread, and it pulls on the thread, and it keeps pulling until it unravels the entire garment. And the old woman comes back, and she looks at the garment of beauty, now turned into chaos, all disentangled. And for a moment, she doesn't do anything. Then she sits down, and she sees a loose thread, and she picks up the thread and starts to weave. And as soon as she starts to weave, she gets an even more beautiful vision of the garment. And this is going to be an even more beautiful garment than the one before. And she's on her way weaving. So when they tell the story, the elders say this is a story to understand what's happening now. And then someone will say, damn that black dog. If it wasn't for the black dog, she would have finished the garment, and it would have been perfect. And the elders say, the word perfect means over and done. It's connected to death. Be thankful for what unravels the world, because the world unravels only to be rewoven out of threads. And then I say, we're like that old woman, looking at the chaos that the world has become. And it isn't our job to fix it all, or to kind of collapse into fear and worry. It's our job to pick up a thread like she does. And now I switched to an Irish myth, which says when the world falls apart, the pieces are laying in the margins, and our job is to pick up a piece from the margin and pull it back to the middle. And if everyone just brings their thread forward, we can reweave the garment of the world out of our individual threads, and no one has to be a hero. We all just have to be dedicated to weaving.
Oh, wow, that's such a cool story. That's really...
Okay. So just give you a couple of seconds. Anybody got, did you like that story? What did you see in it? What did you hear in it? Just unmute yourself and go.
Well, I just love it. I've had a couple days to think about it because you showed it to me, Kim. The notion that each of us has a thread that we can pick up is both empowering and comforting. It's empowering because there is something valuable that each of us can do, and it's comforting because we don't have to do everything. We only need to do what is available to us to do. And yet that is powerful. Beautiful. Because it is ours to do, and we do it with everyone else. So that's my reaction to that great story.
Thank you so much, David. Who else?
Yeah, I love the deconstructing the hero story as well, because I love that we all have our part in picking a thread, and we all have to be dedicated to the weaving, you know. And I just found that such a beautiful image. Thanks for showing that, Kim.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really drawn to the and it is a bit of a theme that I bang on about a bit. I think the needing to be smashed to bits for something more beautiful to be built that you probably couldn't have imagined while the old persisted.
Yes, absolutely. Me too. Me too. I so resonate with that. And yeah, it's not damn that black dog. It's thank goodness for the black dog, in a way.
Yeah. Well, it's the belief that on the outer level that capitalism has to die. And as painful and as I can't think of the other word, and destructuring as it is, that's the only way something new will be born.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I don't want to throw a wrench in the whole loving the story thing.
I was just going to ask, does anybody it doesn't appeal to them, doesn't resonate with them?
God, so there's this woman doing this all by herself and wearing her teeth to the bone, and it's like, oh my goodness. And so, yeah, so I kind of was hoping at the end of the story, other people would come and help weave this thing together. So that's what I'm going to imagine.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Oh, Kat, it's found you 3 times in the last 3 days. Oh, wow. And what do you take from it? What do you see in it?
Well, curiously, having had it discover me 3 times in the last 3 days, I've been spending quite some time sitting with it. I think for me, much as Malika said, I like the deconstruction of the hero story. I like that the invitation is to pick a thread and take some responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have to figure out which thread is ours.
Yes, well, that's what the rest of this workshop's about, really.
And be comfortable enough to not feel the need to tell other people what to do with their threads. That seems to happen quite often.
Yes, but I agree with you, Karen, that you know, and I think again one of the great strengths of DA as a community is that it's very much about the we rather than I, yeah, I mean, I think that's what it's all about for me. It's community, picking up might be individual threads, but we're weaving together. We may not be weaving, you know, from the same thread, but we're weaving something together. Yeah.
And I would say we are not weaving. Something is being woven. I don't even think we can take agency. We are part of it, but something, nature has been doing its thing for 500 million years. No one was directing that, right? But something is being woven, and we just need to create the circumstances for that to happen. You know,
yeah,
nobody gets to put their name on the author page. You know.
Yeah, very much, very much. So we come back again to this idea of listening, creating that clearing in the forest, listening and trusting our nudges, our wisdom, that thing, whatever that thing is, Stephen, trusting that thing. Yes, Dean.
So I've been a long time Michael Meade fan, and right in that same ballpark, in that same neighborhood is a my grief mentor, Francis Weller, and they've played these kind of bookends in a similar way as my experience right now with this story. Because one thing I noticed in Michael Meade's story was it was an individual woman, and what wasn't present for me, and it's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I would want to bring in the element of grief. There was no communitas, there was no community, there was no loss, sense of shared loss, and to be able to till the soil of that, to be able to then choose the thread after really diving into the fullness of the experience of that loss. So I don't know how to include that or what the right, way to add it in at some point, but that's missing for me.
Yeah, Joanna Macy's honouring our pain piece. Thank you so much for raising that, and that's like I shall certainly be reflecting on that for future workshops. Yeah, thanks, Dean.
For me, this was a beautiful image of actually my motto in the past couple of months, years, that do what you can with what you have, where you are.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful story, actually. So, and I agree with what others said. So same for me.
Fantastic. Okay. Brilliant. So are you ready to start going into breakout rooms? And just to kind of clarify, because I have some people who are going to be kind of facilitating the subgroups as well. So just to make sure everybody's clear what we're doing. So we're focusing on the 4R questions rather than any specific ideas that I showed you before. You can use that that link, and I'm just putting it in the chat here, if you want a reminder of the 4 questions. But really, this breakout room is an opportunity to reflect together for about 20 minutes on what feels most important, what might be a nudge that you get, what might be your thread to pick up. And I'm also very conscious with this particular group that you've already spent a great many years, decades in some cases, thinking about this, and you may be feeling right now, oh, I've done that, I know what that is, and that's fine. So if that's the case for you, then just be a useful resource for the rest of the small group. But sometimes, you can always see something new, you can always see something deeper about this. I think it's so funny, Kat, that story found you 3 times. See, that's not insignificant, is it? I don't think.
No, not at all. I love it when the universe does things like that. See this? See this?
Yeah, it's kind of like poke, poke, poke.
And then slap when you miss it.
Yeah. Will you listen?
Yeah, but David was saying about the function of the pot stirring at the back of the cave.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a what's that about, so that'd be interesting to explore sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to ask David to just say a bit about that now, and also you, Matthew, to share, if you don't mind, your wonderful thing about the humans doing the hymn. I thought that was brilliant.
I was just saying that in the story, it's fascinating that there are two places of action. There's the front of the cave where the woman spirit is weaving the garment, and there's the back of the cave where in the cauldron above the fire, all of biology exists and requires periodic stirring by the woman spirit to survive. And it's only by the requirement of attention in the back that the opportunity exists for the black dog to come and do the unraveling. So it points to an alternation of attention, maybe, or the cycles of day and night, something like that. We're in the back of the cave when we're asleep or when we're dead. In the front, things are going on, and then when we're awake and working, our attention is given to weaving the garment. So it's a very interesting and powerful story. That was my observation.
Great, thank you. And yeah, Matthew, if you wouldn't mind.
I was just playing with the idea that the old lady weaves a garment and it takes 1 million years, and it's the biosphere, and she has a go and then doesn't like it quite so much, so it unravels it, has another go, and each time it takes 1 million years. And the last time she starts to design humans near the hem when the garment's nearly finished, and then she gives them the power to finish the garment. But what they don't realize is what they create, this wonderful, amazing hem that they create right at the end of the garment, is using all the thread, and they're unraveling the biosphere to make this flourishing finish.
Yeah. Lovely. So welcome back, everybody. So let's begin then. Is anybody want to share anything about something that they might have seen fresh, new, or more deeply about their own particular thread? Because yeah, that's really kind of the intention of this workshop, was to give you a space, that clearing in the forest, to inquire into that. What's mine to do? And as I say, I know you're an atypical group because that's probably all you think about all day long, every day. But has anybody got anything to say about that?
I think for me, I was just struck by the fact that she picked up her unwoven weaving and started again. She didn't weep and wail and run around. It's just not this is awful. It's this is what is. This is what is. What is the best I can do with what is now? And that kind of sums up everything for me.
Yeah. And where does that take you, Kat, in terms of?
It used to make me feel somewhat guilty because I felt that I should be. This is what a loving person looks like, someone who's flawed with the grief and pain and cannot behave, in the same way that there was a time when I thought that this is what a mother who's had her kids removed looks like. She is hanging onto a drinks bottle in one hand and the school gate with the other, trying to see them. If I'm okay, I must be being wicked, because a good person would feel this pain. And I feel the same around this stuff, that I have a choice. I can be completely disabled by it, by walking into the pain, or I can walk into that and find a way. And I need you lot to help me find that way. And some days it's too much and some days it's not. To be with it and say, what's the next right thing to do? And then the next, and then the next. And sometimes it's breath by breath.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
I can connect that. So this is what grief is. So you take one step at a time, and you don't have to see the future. You don't have to see the next year. You have to see sometimes the next moment. And basics of grief, no judgment. So grief is a non-judgment zone, including not judging ourselves in our grief, because you are where you are supposed to be. No shoulds.
Yeah, thank you.
And for me, this whole story, so the myth is my biggest takeaway, beyond that I'm always happy when I can be with you. So the connection. Each time I can connect with you, I just don't feel alone. And it reminds me that I'm not doing this alone. And this was the so this the myth just made me conscious that I just have to pick the thread, the one thread. And since I'm doing this, I feel confirmed and reinforced, and it energizes me to take this day and the next one and the next one day at a time, and don't overthink it, and letting go of perfectionism and everything that goes with that. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. And Dean says in the chat, perhaps there are nuances between the binary of completely crushed by the loss and feeling very little or being unmoved. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else seen anything about their own, what might be their own thread in this?
So I was touched when one of the things in the list was to give up, was guilt and perfectionism. And it just feels like, to me, that's part of what I can offer as far as like helping explain why we might feel guilt and perfectionism, and then helping the self that's in there to understand and be compassionate towards those parts of themselves, and also the parts that might be folding if they weren't there. So yeah, it's kind of helping people understand.
Yeah, it's a wonderful contribution. Thank you. What else?
In our little breakout room, Michaela said something that really moved Kat, Dorian, and I, which was the feeling that she has of being of joyful service. And that's what helps, makes her happy and stimulates the people that she works with. So I thought that was a beautiful expression.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the is it Wendell Berry? I am joyful, although although I know all the facts. I think that's still possible.
I wanted to mention that your framing of the clearing in the forest was very useful to me, that the idea that the first step is to make quietude in which the tiny whispers of wisdom and direction can be heard is such an important step. And I guess that would relate to relinquishment in a certain way. All of them, really. In our society, we're so filled from the earliest times with ideas and structures and pre-existing stories and all this stuff, and it creates something within us that blocks our ability to perceive the quiet whispers of wisdom, truth, nudges, guidance, whatever you want to call it. So you got to get quiet first. That I really took that away. And Igor reassured me that in order to make a clearing in the forest, you don't have to cut down a lot of trees, or if you do have to cut the trees, it's part of the healthy ecosystem of the forest.
Yeah, yeah.
So very useful.
Yeah, I think you're right. For me, I've noticed that, you know, it does often speak in a whisper, but it can be very difficult to hear that gentle piccolo of wisdom if there's also a brass band playing in your head at the same time. Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, one thing that occurred to me was that this metaphor of the thread and the garment is fractal to some extent. So for example, when I think back on what my life is made of, there isn't just one thread or one strand, but several strands which are interwoven, and maybe my life is like a garment itself, but then I am a thread in a much larger garment. And so, yeah, it just made me reflect on the various threads which I am consciously choosing to integrate into the fabric of my existence, because there are going to be more than one, always.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes I know for me what kind of looks like, if I was to sort of split my calendar, my week, my month into different threads in terms of projects, they can look different, but actually they connect up to a bigger thread, which they're all kind of different manifestations of, in a way. Yeah. And I also think the threads, I'm not sure there's kind of one for life. I think they can change and morph, and yeah. Thank you. Just going to leave a little bit of room for anybody else that wants to come in.
There's something for me to work through. I've sorted it out yet, but around what's unraveling and what's reweaving something new, and perhaps they're the same task in some way. Yeah, something around that. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
David, hearing you mention the word quiet and silence just reminded me of something that happened to me last week in therapy, when my therapist asked me what I wanted to be to those around me, and I said because now to just concentrate on being rather than doing what I did before. And so I said I just try to be light to the others, and I try to shine, and sometimes there's not much to shine, but sometimes there is, and I'll just see what happens. And then she asked me where I feel that light, and whether there was one part of my body where I'd like more light to be and to happen. And then my head came into my mind and I said that. And she said, let the light get. And the interesting thing was that what happened immediately was that all thoughts were gone. And it wasn't light, but it was empty. And it was empty. And I could just let go of all the threads around me. And it felt wonderful. And it was like that for a long time. And that this emptiness filled me up so much and made me so receptive at the same time for things around me. So this light and letting go and threads and emptiness and fire. Yeah, it's just a bit. Yeah, lots of association. Thanks.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, that's delightful. Mm. Okay. Well, we're kind of moving towards the checkout now. That's okay. Some of you have already shared this. What are you taking away? And what's been your experience of this workshop? And as I say, I will be sending you a feedback questionnaire, which will allow you to go into a little bit more detail. But yeah, so what are you taking away? And what's been your experience of this workshop? Can I start with you, Kat Suarez?
I'm taking away, Kimberley, and you spoke it. I was about to jump in and say it. I was getting a really powerful strength that there isn't a single thread that I will pick up that's mine for life. And if I reflect back, there's a common theme through most of my life, but the thread has definitely shifted and changed from time to time in the way that I'm embodying that. So I'm taking that away with me, this idea that what's mine is mine in this moment, and maybe mine is something entirely different in the next moment or the moments that follow.
Yeah.
And what am I taking away? There's definitely joy in me, and curiosity and inspiration. And that was 3 words because I can't follow instructions.
Thank you so much. If it's okay, thank you, Kat. And I've just put the 2 questions in the chat. If it's all right, I'm just going to pick on people in a loving way. Matthew.
I've taken away a very nice image of unraveling and reweaving, perhaps a part of the same process. It feels like I can work through that a bit. It's not, yeah, this mileage in that image. Experience the workshop. It's always lovely to be with these people, and it's been well held and smooth. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks, Kat.
I think I have been gifted through some of what I've heard and some of what I've shared with a sense of sort of alert humming stillness, like a spinning top would have. So there's energy in there, but it's also wait, be patient, see what comes next. And my experience was, it was just lovely, just what I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that humming. I sometimes can hear the hum, like the hum of life, the hum of Gaia, or the hum of the universe. Wonderful. Thank you. Rowan.
Yeah, I think I'm taking away connection and the idea that connection on all levels and from all levels is important and good and okay. Don't always have to be in a particular place to connect or where you feel that you normally are to connect. And I think that's been really valuable for me. And also to take away that sometimes you're in a place that might take a bit longer for things to sink in or to think about things, and that's okay too. It doesn't have to be an immediate sense of understanding and gratification. And not that I didn't understand it, but I just know that I've got so much more to understand on so many different levels, and that's nice.
Brilliant. Trusting the unfolding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. David, as my lovely co-facilitator. Thank you so much. Yeah, how about for you?
I want to thank you, Kim, for the courage to step out and be the first contributor to this process of trying to understand how to talk about the 4R's and how to deliver that to our community and to the world. What I felt today, I picked up 3 or 4 absolutely brilliant kernels of wisdom from various people in the various contexts. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's an incredibly important idea. We could spend 2 hours talking about that one thing, and there were 4 of them, plus your framing. We suffer, I think, from a surfeit of wisdom, powerful wisdom. And we're trying to figure out how to process it all, how to make it available. And I just want to thank you for stepping up and making an entry. And I look forward to further work. And I want to thank everyone who contributed today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. Christina.
I didn't have any expectations. I came with curiosity of what will be unfolding, and I'm very happy with what happened. So, as I said, the major takeaway is the myth. I think I'll be living with it for a couple of days, weeks, and it will come back to me when I need it. So I just treasure that. And yeah, I'm so glad that there is a discussion about the 4R's, because for me, as I said in the breakout room, this is just the essence of DA. And I think that this is very, very important. So thanks for making this possible. So thank you. Thank you all for sharing.
Thank you, Christina. Dorian.
So I'm taking away the atmosphere of that cave with the old woman and the cauldron and this trickster black dog that just appears out of nowhere. Or maybe, yeah, we just never really paid attention to the dog. Yeah. And I really experienced this lovely space with so many amazing facilitators and people that I just enjoy spending time with. So it was a very heartwarming experience. And I feel like perhaps a new weaving loom is being introduced into our network through this event. So thank Thank you so much, Kimberley, David, and everyone else.
Thanks, Dorian. Michaela.
Thanks, Kim. I'm taking away a lot of joy and gratitude, and just looking at your faces and your eyes and looking forward to the future, whatever it may hold. Yes. Thank you for hosting this, and I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the sharing in the breakout rooms and also in the big group at the end.
Thank you. Karen.
So I'm taking away that I think there might be a space for me in this group. And the experience was really just hearing a lot of little bits of people's threads, and it was really exciting. So I'm looking forward to knowing people better, because I really like the variety and the brilliance and the interesting people that are here. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Dean.
I have a very similar amount of acknowledgement that I heard from David about Kim, both you and David and anyone else that contributed. I think you've set out a lovely foundation for an entry level into the 4R's and the basics of deep adaptation. And so I'm just really, really pleased that you've stepped up to do that, and it's looks like very strong, good seeds planted. Thank you. And what I'm taking away personally was the depth and sweetness of the breakout room. It was in that connection, that time of a remarkably intimate relational time, just kind of out of nowhere. And so I'll take that preciousness with me.
Thank you. Stephen. You're muted. Stephen. Stephen.
Hey, Stephen.
Stephen.
You're muted, Stephen. Stephen, we
We
cannot
can't hear you.
you.
Cannot hear you.
Stephen.
Stephen, unmute yourself.
Well, he's having a great time, whatever he's
Yeah.
saying.
Oh God, I so want to know what you're saying.
Can you ask him to unmute? Like on the button.
Yeah.
It looks like a performance.
I've never seen him so happy.
Well,
I've done that.
I think we should let it be. I think we just let it be.
Okay.
yesterday we were talking about alcohol together, so maybe like good days.
Thank you, Stephen.
Memories and performances.
So that just leaves Igor.
Yes, and I'm muted already. So yeah, I need to share one word, what I take with me, but well, in order to be understood, I want to remind the first word I used when I came here. So this word was everything together.
Yes.
And what I'm taking with me is not really much different from that. Is confusion.
Ah, okay. Can you, we have time. Can you say just a little bit more about that, Igor?
Well, I've wrote it in the chat, and because it is so close to my first word when I came here, I asked myself, is it about the process or about my own state or both? But it's like very interesting, different things all together. And I try to see connections between them. But then what I have in the result is a confusion.
Okay.
Because I cannot connect everything together. But maybe it's like the part of my day. It goes like this. And I'm joining with this like gratitude. And so it's like always need some courage to do something new. And it's an important step. As it was shared in our breakout room by one of us, these 4R's is kind of a key thing for many of us, at least, and for me as well. So I was surprised when I discovered that there is no much experience in facilitated processes around 4R's, and we need to do this work definitely. And I thank you for this first very important step.
Oh, thank you, Igor. And yeah, I'm sure, well, already I can think of things that I would change about the workshop process. It's been so useful for me to have you here as guinea pigs, and I'm very grateful for that. And yes, Matthew, I will send the links to the music and the story, as well as the slide deck and the feedback questionnaire. So, yeah.
There was people who couldn't join because there was no room for people. So
yes,
we should make another time.
Yes. Yes, I'm very happy to do that. Very happy to do that. There were some people who did say they were coming and then didn't. So I will also follow up with them. Okay, so that's it. We're done. Thanks again so much. And I look forward to receiving your improvements, your suggestions. Happy to jump on a call about that with any of you. But thank you. If you just all unmute yourself and say a loving thread-like au revoir to everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody, and Kim especially.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Blessings, one and all.
До свидания.
Yeah.
Love.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.